Ironheart is practically unwatchable. Toot toot, Jerry laughs. Yes, there is an alphabet character. They admit Ironheart sucks, but look, they're getting ready to blame you for it because Ironheart fulfills low expectations with weak narrative, poorly written characters, and dull acting.
In this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
Dominique Thorne, I have seen all of the first 3 episodes of Ironheart.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark gets like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through and he's like, who's that? And she's like, I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark. And he's like, I like that girl. And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
How did this even come about?
Imagine being handed the keys to the most powerful franchise in Hollywood. Billboards with your face, headlines calling you the next Iron Man, executives whispering about billion-dollar potential. That was the promise given to Dominique Thorne when she stepped into the role of Riri Williams, better known as Ironheart. But instead of becoming Marvel's golden future, she became something no actor wants to be, a cultural punchline.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them. All
The very studio that raised her up to lead the MCU's next chapter suddenly went silent when the backlash hit. And what started as excitement for a brand new hero turned into one of the most savage internet takedowns Marvel has ever faced. The question isn't whether Ironheart flopped. That's already history. The real question is this: how did Marvel's future star go from a billion-dollar promise to a viral meme roasted by millions? And to understand that downfall, you have to start with how Dominique Thorne was positioned to inherit a throne that even Robert Downey Jr. himself left behind.
Dominique's that she's having on young Black girls, and I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way.
When Marvel Studios announced Dominique Thorne as the actress chosen to play Riri Williams, the expectations were sky high. Fans had just said goodbye to Tony Stark, the most beloved character in the franchise, and the studio needed a successor. Not just another side character, but someone they could build the next era of Marvel around. Disney sold Dominique as that person. Interviews framed her as the heir to Iron Man's legacy. Press releases promised she would carry the franchise into its bold new phase, and every trailer was cut to make her look like the centerpiece of Marvel's future. She wasn't just stepping into a role, she was stepping into the billion-dollar shoes of Robert Downey Jr. But here's the problem. With expectations that high, even the smallest stumble becomes magnified. Fans didn't just want Dominique to succeed, they needed her to be flawless. And the cracks started showing almost immediately. Even before Ironheart aired, discussions online hinted at doubt. Could she really carry the weight of Marvel's next phase? Was Disney forcing another replacement storyline instead of building something original? These questions lingered, and they grew louder with every teaser. Marvel had promised the world that Dominique was the face of the future, but the internet was already sharpening its knives, and the storm broke in a way nobody could have predicted, with an animated comedy show that had no stake in Marvel at all, because that's when Rick and Morty came swinging. Rick and Morty has built its reputation on one thing: tearing pop culture apart with savage parody. But when the show turned its sights on Marvel's newest risk, Ironheart, it wasn't just another throwaway gag. It was a full-scale cultural takedown. Their animated version of Riri Williams was portrayed as awkward, clueless, and constantly begging to be seen as Tony Stark's successor. Every line dripped with roast. Every gag hammered the same point. Marvel's future wasn't a hero at all. It was a flop waiting to happen, and audiences ate it up. Clips from the episode spread like wildfire on TikTok, Reddit, and Twitter. Fans who were once cautiously optimistic about Dominique's role started piling on, using the parody as proof that Marvel had completely lost its magic. Memes branded her the replacement nobody asked for. Hashtags like #IronFlop trended worldwide. The parody didn't just roast the character, it planted doubt in fans' minds before the show even aired. And because the jokes felt believable, the satire became more damaging than any critic's review could have been. For Marvel, this was a nightmare. Instead of controlling the narrative, the studio had been blindsided by a cartoon. But for Dominique, the damage was far more personal. She wasn't just criticized, she was insulted. Imagine being cast as the face of Marvel's future, only to watch your character turned into a global punchline before audiences even saw your first scene. And the worst part? This was just the beginning. Because what started as parody would soon turn into a wildfire that neither Marvel nor Dominique could control. If Rick and Morty lit the spark, the internet turned it into an inferno. Almost overnight, Dominique Thorne's character went from Marvel's future to Marvel's favorite punching bag. TikTok edits clipped every awkward moment of her on screen, spliced side by side with the parody footage. Twitter threads went viral comparing Tony Stark's most iconic lines to Riri's delivery, with captions like, "We went from from this to this? On Reddit, fans debated whether the parody episode was actually more entertaining than Marvel's own show. And the scary part? Most agreed it was. The hashtag #IronFlop shot up worldwide, trending in multiple countries. Fans who hadn't even seen an episode of Ironheart joined in on the roast because the memes were everywhere. For every official Marvel trailer, there were 10 times as many viral edits ridiculing Dominique's performance. The cruel irony, the parodies and memes often outperformed Disney's multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns. It didn't matter if Dominique had talent. It didn't matter if the writing or direction was the real problem. In the ruthless court of online culture, perception is reality, and perception had already decided. She wasn't the face of Marvel's future. She was the joke that everyone shared for a laugh. And as the flames spread across social media, the studio stayed silent. No statement defending her. No attempt to shift the narrative. That silence only fueled speculation. If Marvel wouldn't stand by Dominique, why should the fans? For Dominique herself, it was more than just trending hashtags. It was insult on a global scale. The studio that had promised her the mantle of Iron Man was watching quietly as her reputation crumbled. And with each new meme, each new viral clip, the idea of Ironheart being Marvel's next big thing slipped further out of reach. But the internet backlash was only part of the story. Because when the critics finally got their hands on the show, they didn't hold back. And if the memes weren't enough to bury Ironheart, the reviews finished the job. When Ironheart finally premiered on Disney+, the anticipation was already gone. Fans weren't asking, will this be Marvel's next big hit? They were asking, will it be as bad as the memes? That's a life sentence for any show. The reviews came in fast, and they were savage. Words like uninspired, hollow, and painfully forgettable filled the headlines. Some critics tried to soften the blow, praising Dominique for at least trying to carry the series. But even those compliments came with a dagger. She was clearly out of place, attempting to shoulder a franchise too heavy for any newcomer. The numbers told the same story. In its first days, Ironheart couldn't come close to matching the viewership of Marvel's other shows. Comparisons to Daredevil were especially dangerous. In 3 days, Daredevil pulled over 300 million minutes of watch time, with less runtime available. Ironheart, despite the marketing push, couldn't compete.
Was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't.
And critics weren't the only ones piling on. Fan forums lit up with disappointment. YouTube breakdowns called the show Marvel's most skippable series yet. Comment sections were flooded with viewers admitting they couldn't even finish the first episodes. Dominique's debut wasn't just divisive, it was almost universally branded as a letdown. But the real dagger wasn't the bad reviews, it was what they confirmed. The Rick and Morty parody had already planted doubt, and now the critics gave that doubt legitimacy. Every awkward scene was turned into ammunition for more memes. Every review became another nail in the coffin. Marvel had promised Dominique would carry the MCU into its bold new phase. Instead, her first appearance became the symbol of franchise fatigue, recycled storylines, and a studio running out of magic. And that's when the panic really set in. Because while the internet was laughing, executives inside Disney were scrambling. And when the backlash grew louder than the applause, Disney made a decision that shocked everyone. Inside Disney, panic spread faster than they wanted anyone to know. Executives had poured millions into Ironheart. Merchandise was already planned. Future cameos were being sketched out. And Dominique Thorne was supposed to be the fresh face carrying Marvel into Phase 5. But as the backlash grew louder, the silence from the studio said everything. Instead of defending their actress, instead of rallying behind the show, Disney went quiet. No heartfelt interviews backing Dominique. No bold statements telling fans to give the series a chance. Nothing. For an actor, that silence is devastating because it sends one message: you're on your own. Behind the scenes, whispers began to leak. Emergency meetings, frantic debates about whether Ironheart could even be salvaged. Rumors of rewrites, repositioning, even full-scale rebranding spread across Hollywood blogs. But while the executives argued, the internet kept laughing, and the laughter was louder than anything Disney could drown out. Then came the bombshell. In a move nobody expected, Disney announced that Ironheart Season 2 was not delayed, not reworked, it was canceled completely. For a studio that prides itself on long-term planning, a cancellation this early was shocking. Headlines framed it as Disney's first public admission of failure in the MCU's history. Fans who had clung to hope were stunned, while critics labeled it proof of Marvel's decline. But for Dominique Thorne, it was more than just a cancellation. It was betrayal. She had been promised the mantle of Iron Man, sold as the heir to Robert Downey Jr.'s legacy. And now, the very studio that had lifted her up was abandoning her without a fight. Worse, in the court of public opinion, the failure wasn't Marvel's. It was hers. Social media didn't say, Marvel canceled a struggling project. They said, Dominique Thorne couldn't carry Iron Man's legacy. And once that narrative sticks, it's almost impossible to shake. For Disney, the decision may have been about cutting losses. But for Dominique, it marked the moment her career shifted from Hollywood's future to Hollywood's Hollywood's cautionary tale. And just when she thought the storm might finally settle, it only got worse. Because Rick and Morty came back swinging. If the first parody buried Ironheart, the second one sealed the coffin. Being roasted once on Rick and Morty could be brushed off as coincidence. Twice? That locks you into cultural memory as a punchline. And that's exactly what happened to Dominique Thorne. In a follow-up episode, Rick and Morty doubled down on their Ironheart parody. This time, the jabs were even more savage. The cartoon version of Riri Williams gave endless awkward speeches about being Tony Stark's true successor, only for every other character to roll their eyes, roast her, and tear her down. The climax was savage, her armor malfunctioning mid-battle, causing her to accidentally destroy her own tech. It wasn't just a gag, it was a metaphor. Marvel sabotaging itself, and the internet loved every second of it. Clips went viral within hours. TikToks racked up millions of views. Reddit threads treated the parody as the real version of Ironheart, joking that Rick and Morty had captured Marvel better than Marvel itself. Fans weren't just laughing at Dominique's character anymore. They were laughing at Marvel as a whole. For Dominique, the second roast was devastating. It meant the roast wasn't fading away. It was being renewed, refreshed, and locked in place for the long haul. Every time she tried to move past the backlash, new clips resurfaced to remind the world of the joke. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered that Dominique was furious. She felt abandoned by Disney, frustrated that the studio hadn't stepped in to defend her against the tidal wave of ridicule. Marvel had sold her as the face of Phase 5, yet when the backlash came, they disappeared. But in Hollywood, frustration doesn't always translate into sympathy. Gossip mills twisted her anger into scandal. Headlines painted her as combative or hard to work with. Instead of seeing a young actress left unprotected by her studio, the narrative became that Dominique couldn't handle the pressure. And in an industry where perception is everything, that framing is lethal. And as the internet kept laughing, Hollywood itself began to turn its back. The internet had already decided Dominique Thorne was Marvel's weakest link. But Hollywood is even less forgiving. Casting directors started to whisper. Insiders who once floated Dominique's name for big projects now labeled her a risk. She wasn't the bold new face of Phase 5 anymore. She was the actress who sank Ironheart. Brand partnerships that should have launched her into mainstream stardom quietly evaporated. Companies that once saw her as a future ambassador didn't want their product tied to the face of a flop. And what made it worse was the silence. Disney didn't step in to defend her reputation. No statements, no second chances, no attempt to frame her as a victim of bad writing or a mismanaged project. The same studio that had paraded her as the heir to Iron Man now treated her like a liability. Hollywood thrives on momentum. The second an actor is labeled box office failure, the phone stops ringing. Opportunities dry up not because of talent, but because of perception. And Dominique's perception was now frozen in place. She was the symbol of Marvel's decline. The cultural punchline cemented by Rick and Morty, the actress audiences didn't take seriously. Every month, new memes resurfaced. Every week, podcasts and YouTube channels revisited the disaster of Ironheart. Dominique's name was no longer being discussed for awards or major roles. It was being used as shorthand for Marvel's failures. It wasn't fair, but fairness doesn't matter in this industry. What matters is the story people believe. And right now, the story was simple. Dominique Thorne was the face of Marvel's flop era. But here's the thing about Hollywood. Careers can collapse overnight, but sometimes they can also be rebuilt. History has shown that comebacks are possible. Actors once ridiculed as box office failure have reinvented themselves and risen higher than ever. Stars who were roasted, insulted, or written off have clawed their way back with the right project. The question is, can Dominique Thorne do the same? Her challenge is steeper than most. She doesn't just need a good performance. She doesn't just need a successful film. She needs redemption. She needs a role so undeniable, so powerful, that it erases the memory of Ironheart's flop and silences the endless memes. Anything less won't work. But redemption stories are rare. Hollywood loves a comeback, but it also loves a villain. And Dominique has been framed as the villain of Marvel's decline, the scapegoat for a failing franchise. The internet doesn't forget, and right now, it doesn't forgive. Still, there's a glimmer of possibility. If the right director takes a chance on her, if the right script allows her to show a side audiences haven't seen before, Dominique could flip the narrative. She could turn ridicule into respect. But time is running out. Every year that passes, the Iron Flop memes grow more cemented in cultural memory. The stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about landing another role. For Dominique, her next move will decide whether she's remembered as Marvel's biggest mistake, or as the actress who turned insult into triumph. And that brings us to the harsh truth. Ironheart's legacy has already been written, but Dominique's story isn't finished just yet. Ironheart was supposed to be Marvel's bold new chapter, the story of a young genius stepping into Iron Man's shoes, played by an actress handpicked to carry the MCU into its future. Instead, it became the franchise's most public collapse, roasted by satire, buried by memes, and abandoned by the very studio that created it. For Dominique Thorne, the irony couldn't be sharper. She wanted to be remembered as the actress who carried Tony Stark's legacy forward. Instead, she became the star star roasted in parodies, the centerpiece of viral jokes, the symbol of Marvel's decline. In Hollywood, perception is everything, and right now Dominique's perception is fractured beyond repair. But the industry is unpredictable. Careers that seem finished can be revived. Actors branded as failures can rise again. The question is, will Dominique find that opportunity, or has the internet laughter already decided her fate? Because one thing is certain, Marvel's fairy tale with Ironheart has ended, and the punchline written by Rick and Morty may outlive the role itself.